Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. A professor of microbiology tells us what extended lockdown restrictions could mean for the UK. The High Court rules a government decision related to friends of Dominic Cummings was unlawful. And British Airways and Ryanair are under investigation over a lack of lockdown refunds. Lockdown easing in England could be delayed beyond the 21st of June. Ministers will make the decision next week. NTD's Jane Werrell talks to a professor of microbiology who argues we shouldn't be heading for an extension.
Community Secretary Robert Jenrick says virus cases are rising and Boris Johnson is reviewing data to decide on whether or not to lift restrictions on June the 21st. Chancellor Rishi Sunak has also hinted at the idea of an extension, but some experts warn the effects of lockdown outweigh the gains.
Reports say that Rishi Sunak is prepared to delay the unlocking date from June the 21st. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that we should have unlocked weeks ago. That deployment of vaccines has broken the link between infections and severe disease. The numbers of people with severe COVID, the numbers of people in ICU are dramatically down. And it's hospitalizations and severe disease that we should be worrying about. We should just accept that COVID is now with us for all future as a further circulating respiratory disease. What's critical is that that link between infection and severe disease has been broken and that society therefore should return to normal, because the costs of lockdown are massive. They're massive for the economy, they're massive for people's mental health. Lockdowns are incredibly destructive.
The scientific community has different views on the lockdown strategy.
There are differing views among scientists on lockdown. You have some very senior people who are in favour of lockdowns. You have strong opponents of lockdowns, including myself. You have a lot of scientists who have just gone with the flow. Lockdown has been adopted as a policy and they've gone along with it.
The Vice Chair of the 1922 Committee of Tory backbenchers has said a lockdown extension would come as a disappointment to many people. Next Monday, Boris Johnson will be announcing if so-called Freedom Day will be extended beyond June the 21st. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
The High Court has ruled that a government decision to award a contract to friends of Dominic Cummings was unlawful. Cummings was the Prime Minister's chief advisor at the time.
A government decision to award a contract to a company whose bosses were friends of Dominic Cummings was unlawful. That's according to a High Court ruling made on Wednesday. Campaigners took legal action against Minister Michael Gove over the decision to pay £500,000 to market research firm Public First. They claim that Cummings wanted focus group and support services work to go to the company whose bosses were his friends. Cummings was Prime Minister Boris Johnson's right-hand man at the time. The ruling says the decision showed apparent bias because there had been a failure to consider any other research agency. In response to the ruling, Cummings says the country was facing an emergency because of the pandemic and the award of the contract without delay was entirely justified. He wrote on Twitter, "On this basis, the courts should rule that many decisions taken in 2020 were similarly unlawful."
Football fans will need to show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test to get into Wembley Stadium this weekend, where England will take on Croatia in their first game of the Euro 2020. NTD's Jane Werrell brings us more.
Vaccine passports will be used for England's Euro 2020 game at Wembley Stadium. England will be taking on Croatia on Sunday. Football fans attending will be asked to show proof of having had the second dose of the vaccination at least 14 days before the match. Europe's football governing body UEFA say they can also provide a negative lateral flow test. It applies to anyone aged 11 and above. For people in England, proof of vaccination can be shown via the NHS app. For matches taking place at Hampden Park, ticket holders don't have to show proof of vaccination or a negative test. The idea of vaccine passports have been met with criticism and support. Some say it would allow people to go back to normality in a safer way. But there are fears the system would discriminate, leaving out sections of society who don't have the jab. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
British Airways and Ryanair are under investigation over their failure to offer refunds during lockdown. Britain's national airline says the government is seeking to punish further an industry that is on its knees.
British Airways and Ryanair are under investigation over whether they broke the law by not offering refunds during the pandemic. The Competition and Markets Authority, or CMA, says the airlines may have needed to issue refunds to those who were barred from taking flights due to pandemic restrictions. During lockdowns across Britain, instead of offering refunds to those legally unable to fly, the two airlines offered vouchers or rebooking. The CMA says they understand airlines had a tough time during the pandemic, but people should not be left unfairly out of pocket for following the law. BA says it issued more than 3 million refunds and that the government is seeking to punish further an industry that is on its knees. Ryanair says it welcomes the review of its policies and has paid refunds in justified cases. This comes after the CMA launched enforcement action against several package holiday firms, forcing them to offer cash refunds to customers. The watchdog will be writing to both airlines as part of the investigation.
And in related news, a trade association says UK airports may lose billions because there are no major tourist destinations on the green list. The Airport Operators Association warns of a £2.6 billion loss this year due to the government's overly cautious approach to reopening international travel. The association says passenger numbers in the coming months could be as bad or worse than summer 2020, and that Brits could visit significantly more destinations last summer without needing to quarantine on return. The current traffic light regime has no major tourist locations on the green list following Portugal's removal. The next review of the travel lists is expected on 24th of June. And in other news, theatre entrepreneur Andrew Lloyd-Webber has vowed to open his theatres on the 21st of June. That's whether restrictions are lifted or not. He says in an interview with The Telegraph he is willing to face arrest to proceed as planned. NTD's Neil Woodrow is in the West End.
As the country waits to hear whether the final lockdown lifting will take place on June 21st, British theatre entrepreneur Lord Andrew Lloyd-Webber is getting impatient. In an interview with The Telegraph on Wednesday, he said, "We are going to open come hell or high water." Currently, theatres can open at 50% capacity. Lloyd-Webber says he still plans to open without social distancing on June 21st, even if the government postpones the scheduled reopening. He said his response to the government would be, "Come to the theatre and arrest us." Cinderella is Lloyd-Webber's first new musical in 6 years and has cost a £6 million investment. He says he's reliant on selling tickets for all seats for previews set to begin later this month, with the world premiere coming 3 weeks later. Lloyd-Webber said his theatres were suffering acute financial stress because of lockdown restrictions, forcing him to remortgage his London home. He said his 6 performance venues in London are also under threat. Lord Lloyd-Webber's new show Cinderella is due to open for previews on June 25th. Whether that takes place outside government rules on restrictions, we'll have to wait and see. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Gillian Lynn Theatre, London.
Oxford students are sparking backlash on Twitter after removing a portrait of the Queen from their common room. The image was referred to as a symbol of Britain's colonial past. The Education Secretary described their actions as absurd.
Students at the University of Oxford College removed an image of the Queen from their common room, saying she represents colonialism. Education Secretary Gavin Williamson described the action as simply absurd, stating she is the head of state and a symbol of what is best about the UK. The portrait hung in Magdalen College's Middle Common Room, or MCR. The college has a long association with the royal family and was twice visited by the Queen. The MCR committee, made up of graduate students, voted for the portrait to be taken down. They said it represented an unwelcoming symbol of recent colonial history. The decision sparked a backlash on Twitter. President of Magdalen College, Dinah Rose, swiftly distanced the institution from the students involved. Rose said, "Magdalen strongly supports free speech and political debate, and the MCR's right to autonomy. The portrait is understood to have been put into storage."
Now, to prepare gifts for the leaders of the world's richest countries is certainly a challenge. But the government has solved the problem with the help of three sisters.
When world leaders arrive in Cornwall this week, they'll find in their rooms a hamper of Cornish-made delicacies and gifts. They're all designed by sisters Ainsley Fowler, Tegan Mackay and Safi Maki. The trio's lifestyle shop in St Ives was chosen by the government to provide gifts for the delegates, and the commission came out of the blue.
And they actually said, I'm calling from the Cabinet Office and one of your products has really caught the attention of number 10, which I of course thought, is this a joke? Is this real?
The sisters' shop was set up in February 2020, just before the first lockdown. They said the commission has provided a real boost for their business after a difficult year.
And we were of course super excited. But they were basically really excited about one product, but it kind of snowballed into other products and eventually led into us doing the hampers for the leaders.
The sisters are keeping secret the exact contents of the hampers, but the items include local biscuits, chocolates, pictures, frames, candles and bath salts. They're also providing soaps and shower gels for the rooms. World leaders looking to relax after long days of meetings will be enjoying lime and bergamot shower gel and rosehip oil body balm.
Still to come, voters in Switzerland are starkly divided over the decision to ban synthetic pesticides, something that has never happened in Europe before. That and more when we return.